Hello, 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 beautiful people. My name is L.A. Roberts, and I am an international best-selling author, speaker, CEO of L.A. Roberts Speaks, as well as D, all of the above, right? I have a lot going on. Any way it goes, I have decided to do a interview series called Conversations with Greatness. And today, I have the amazing opportunity to interview Chereace Richards. Let me tell you about Chereace Richards. She is the founder of the 21st Century Woman community. She is a financial strategist. She's the author of the book Faith, Focus, Action, the journey to becoming who you are. She's been featured in multiple magazines like the Washington Post magazine, Success for Home magazine, Her Life magazine, among many others. And she has received multiple awards, including the Woman of Distinction in Leadership Award. Let me just be clear. Chereace Richards is no one to play with, and I'm just so absolutely excited that she even agreed to come on this particular interview series. Let's everybody welcome Chereace Richards. Hi, Chereace.
Hey, LA, how are you?
I am good. How are you?
I'm amazing. And
Okay.
I thank you so much for having this platform and inviting me into your space to have this conversation, because now is definitely the time to have these types of conversations. So I applaud you and I thank you for inviting me to have this conversation with you. So I am excited and ready to go.
All right. Let's get it then. Okay, so let's start off by how I know you. So I met you in 2016, rounding out one of the hardest seasons of my life. And you were having a 21st Century Woman conference in Maryland. And I was talked into coming by a close friend of ours, a mutual friend of ours. And I told her no at least 3 or 4 times. I mean, flat out, no, I don't want to be there. I'm not coming. And it was because it came on the heels of me losing, my heart, my grandfather, Leon F. Howard Sr., and I really didn't want to do anything. I was not interested in meeting new people. I didn't care anything about coaching or talking to people, or I just didn't want to do anything. Well, apparently I did show up, and I remember making that decision to come to your event. And I sat down in front of the computer and I literally said, well, if I'm going to go to find out if I still have what it takes, then I'm going to do VIP, and that's going to be it. And I don't really care what nobody says. So I did everything at one time, and I hit, the pay button on every website that I had to go to, or whatever, hotel or whatever. And when I got there, I remember being paralyzed in my room. I remember being so paralyzed in my room that I had to talk myself into coming out. I don't know if any of the viewers have experienced such a hard loss, but it put me in such a shell, right? Like, it put me in this place of depression. It put me into a place of me questioning who I was. It put me in a place of just like blatant fear. Like, I was so afraid to even take that step. Finally came down the stairs, and I sat outside the room for another 10 or 20 minutes crying. I mean, I was bawling out of my mind because I was so scared to cross the threshold. Well, I did. And that's where I met you. And it was an amazing event. And you were very nice to me. And just like I mentioned to a previous guest, you don't meet a lot of people that are nice, that are successful in certain things. They get, standoffish. They get, like security, whatever. But you were extremely, extremely nice. And I want to thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's amazing as you're telling that story. Of course, I didn't know all that you went through to get to the event. I do remember you at the event, And now hearing the backstory, it makes it even more powerful, the fact that, or the way that you stood up powerfully for yourself when you did in that VIP session. I remember you being bold enough to stand up, being bold enough to be vulnerable with how you were feeling, what you were dealing with, to be transparent in a room full of strangers, and now hearing what you went through to even get there just shows how, first of all, how God is so amazing.
Yes, he
How
is.
he aligns everything at the right time. He puts us in the right place and gives us exactly what we need, even when it's so difficult for us. And I think what it proves is the fact that we have to continue moving forward. We
Yeah.
have to continue taking the steps, as difficult as it may be, as devastated as we may feel. And you know, I can't really say how how difficult that loss was for you in that moment. But what I can say is the courage you had despite how you were feeling, to continue taking steps. And I firmly believe that when we take 2 steps, God takes 1 step,
Yes.
and then he meets us. Right? A lot of people sit back and they're like waiting for their train to come in. They're waiting for God to show up, and God is sitting back like, I'm here. I'm waiting for you. And so when I look at where you are today, all the phenomenal things that you're doing, the stories that you're telling, the honor that you're giving your grandfather, I believe that it started back in 2016 when you took that first step to hit those buttons and came from Georgia to Maryland.
Yes.
For someone that you did not know.
No.
For an event that you really wasn't even following, wasn't even planning to attend. But that speaks to the power in taking that first step. And so if we can say anything to the viewers today, despite, everything that we're going through right now today, is that you have to continue taking steps forward. And trust me, when you do that, God will meet you where you need to be.
Yeah, it was a now or never moment for me. It literally was either I'm going to do this or I'm not. And at the time, I was really ready to not do it. Like, I had no more motivation.
Yeah.
I didn't have it in me. And I think that at that moment, in that weakest moment, one of the weakest moments in my life, it forced me to not lean on my own strength.
Yeah.
Because there would have been no way I would have made the decision to go without having an anchor, without having that, that faith. And I remember thinking to myself, I made a promise to my papa, and I can't keep the promise unless I make a move, as much as it hurt. And I tell you, I cried on the way to the airport. I cried at the airport, on the plane, in the hotel room. Like, I cried in the room.
In the ballroom, you cried.
I cried everywhere, but I needed to make that step. So that's a part of me. Like, that's a part of my journey. And I truly believe that God used that I know he used it to catapult me into where I am now, because had I not made that decision, had I been stuck, a lot of people get so stuck because they're scared. Yeah. And if I can give anybody any type of advice based on just a little bit of what that I've gone through, do it scared. Do it afraid. Just jump. You never know, what'll happen. I had no idea that I would meet so many wonderful women that I still contact and communicate with today. I had no idea who I was going to meet, because walking in, I only knew one person. And guess what? Didn't really know her.
Oh, wow.
I didn't know her. She connected with me on Facebook.
Wow.
And we started to talk. And when I lost my grandfather, she reached out to me, and, you know, we just start talking. And that's when I met her that night, face to face that night. And she's still my girl to this day. And her name is also Cherise. So, yeah. So, the beautiful beginning to this conversation, because it does matter, you know, the decisions that we make.
Yeah.
Just do it afraid, jump, and you never know where you will go. And I'm not going to say where you will land, because honestly, the things that God have done in my life from this, you know, from that point forward, I'm still floating.
Yeah.
You know, I have not hit the ground, and I don't plan on it until the Lord calls me home. And then I'll be like, okay, now I can rest. Now I can hit the ground now, because I'm still floating, and I plan to float for as long as he allows me to be here. So let's start this conversation now. Okay, so I always start my interviews with the question of with one question, because I think it's very important to get the foundation of who you are out of the way, right? And not necessarily out of the way, let me not say it like that, to introduce Chereace Richards. I introduce to the world who you are professionally. And a lot of people, that's all they can, you know, attribute to. That's all they know. You know, when you ask somebody, well, who are you? They go for their titles. That's the first thing they do. They go for their titles, and they forget who they really are, because without your titles, who are you? If your titles are stripped from you today, where are you? Who are you, right? So I'm going to start with that question. Tell me who Chereace Richards is personally.
Yes, that's a great question. And I think it's so perfect, because you're right. People, we do tend to lean to our titles and our roles. What I want people to know who I am a woman of God, and I consider myself God's masterpiece. That's how I think he sees me, created to do good works that he created just for me long ago. And I am a wife. I'm a wife almost 20 years.
Yay.
I'll be doing some virtual celebration, right?
Okay.
And then I'm a mom, and of two boys, 18 and 14, and a woman who's just passionate about helping other women to discover their God-given purpose so that they can serve and impact the world. I'm super passionate about helping women, helping individuals, helping families to be healthy, wealthy, and wise.
Yeah. And you know what? I think that's important that you said helping other women to impact the world, because we need that particular support. I found that there's a lot of people that are self-serving and not, you know, people serving. And we had more people, or, you know, more women and men that were not just strictly looking at their own agendas and what they can do for themselves and what they need to do and what they can get out of it, right? Then we would be in a better place. And I think that being a servant, or, you know, having a servant's heart is important, because there's enough for everybody to be successful. I don't know where this whole, you know, I have to be on top thing comes from. Why can't we be there together? It's lonely at the top. Well, I heard it. I don't know who said that. Was it Michael Jackson or somebody from Coming to America? I don't know who said it, but it's lonely at the top.
Yeah.
You don't want to be at the top by yourself, right? You want to have like-minded people, and why not help those people get there? So this is an offshooting question. Why do you think that people are afraid of other people being there with them?
Yeah, I believe that people don't know who they are.
That's good.
I think that there's a lot of people who have a scarcity mindset. Whether consciously or unconsciously, I think people are operating from a scarcity mindset. I think people are operating from fear. I think people think that if I share something with you or if we travel together, then, you know, it's not going to be enough for me, or you're going to take something that belongs to me, so I got to hoard it all to myself. And that's just not the way it is. I mean, we've seen it many of times. I'm sure you've experienced it. I've experienced it. When you help enough people have success, then you will have success by default.
Right.
The more you give, the more you get. And then at the end of the day, what's for you is
For you.
and nobody else can take that away. Like nobody can close a door that's meant for you to open or for you to walk into. And when we understand who we are, when we understand whose we are, and we believe it, and we believe those things, like what's for me is for me, then it doesn't matter what I share with you. It doesn't matter how we choose to collaborate, what we choose to do together. It doesn't matter if I invite you into my space or my community. It's not even mine anyway.
Right.
And so, you know, the more people that we can help, you know, the more exposure that we can gain by partnering together and sharing our gifts with the world, the more we can impact, the more we can do the things that we say we want to do. You know what I'm saying?
That's true.
Yeah.
I always say there's no competition for my stuff. Like,
Oh,
there's no competition. Why are we arguing? Why are we fighting for my stuff? I don't have to fight for my stuff because God has already set it aside for me. Why am I trying to get my stuff from you? Right. It's a waste of time. There's no reason to do that. So if we had more people, you know, had that particular mindset, because I find it very interesting how, and I have, with being in this business, I've been speaking now for over 15 years. I'm not going to date myself, but I have been speaking for a very long time. And I find that in certain rooms, it's cold. It's very cold, without saying a word. You know, without even saying a word, it's really cold, and you can almost feel the who is that, you know?
Right.
And me, I'm kind of like, hi, you know, hi, I'm LA, or hi, and they're like,
right.
Hi. Right.
And we don't have time for that, right? Because here's the thing. Yes, I know what you're saying. I have experienced that too, right? But here's the thing. This is why we got to know who we are,
right?
Right? Because when we know we're on assignment, right? We know we typically or traditionally, most often, we have an audience of one, right? And so when we come into a room, it's like, okay, who am I called to serve in this room? I don't care if it's 1,000 people in the room. I don't care if it's 10 people in the room.
Right.
If one person walk away changed, moved, inspired by what I've said, then it don't matter about the shade. It doesn't matter about the tension, you know, the looks, the feelings, or any of that other stuff, right? Because when we go to speak, we always have to remember, and I know you do, that we're on assignment.
Right.
So if we get distracted by what we see, then we can miss the bigger vision. We can miss the point. We can miss the opportunity because we're distracted. And so we can't afford that, because people, like the things that we're called to do and the people that we're called to serve is too important. Like the work that we're doing is too important to get distracted by some other being in a space, whether that's a virtual space or a physical space. We can't allow it. I mean, it's all about protecting, you know, your space. It's about protecting your gift. It's about protecting the things that you're called to do. And whatever that looks like for you, I think it's so important to identify what that is. And then put those measures around you, put those things around you that you need, those practices, those activities, whatever it is you need to protect your space, protect your mind, protect your assignment, so that you don't get distracted because it can be very costly if you do.
Yeah, I agree with you as far as that protection piece,
Mm-hmm.
and everything that you said. But you have to protect your peace and your assignment, and just be in a space where this is where I need to be. Intimidation used to be something that I would struggle with, because I would be like, oh God, am I good enough to be in this room? Look at these women. Look at the way they're dressed. Look at, look at all that they have. And then on the flip side, I would find out that women were looking at me the exact same way. And I'm thinking, me? Why are you looking at me like that, girl? I was looking at you like that. What's going on? So it's something that everybody has dealt with, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you walk in a room and you're like, oh my God, like, what am I doing here? I've been in plenty of rooms, but then I had to remember that I'm here because God put me here.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something that I have to offer.
Yeah.
And I can't leave here without giving it.
Right.
So that's very important to always remember. So let me ask you this. This is a twofold question. What has been one of the greatest accomplishments in your life? And what kind of roadblocks did you run into on the way to that great accomplishment?
That's a very good question, because I firmly believe that in life there's levels, right? And once we've accomplished one thing, there's always, higher ground, bigger accomplishments to pursue, bigger goals to go after. But I would say one of the most pivotal accomplishments that I've had was when I started in business in 2006, mm-hmm. and had no experience in sales and marketing. My background is IT. I was working as an IT project manager. So this whole space was very new to me. Entrepreneurship was very new to me. I had worked all my life up to that point. But I got started in the industry and surrounded myself with people who were very successful, who were doing the things that I wanted to do. And I just became a student of the industry. And then I got this strong desire to pursue it full time. And in 2008, God gave me a word. And I was at a pivotal point. I was at a crossroads, making a decision between, should I continue working my full-time job or pursue entrepreneurship full-time? Make the decision point. And I prayed and I said, okay, God, I'm going to need you to give me a sign. I'm sure people listening to this can relate to being at a point in your life where you're like, I need a sign. Give me a sign. Knock me upside my head, make it clear, make no mistake, help me to be very sure that it's you, God, speaking to me in this moment. And he gave me that type of word. And he said, you know what? In life, you have three choices. You can stay where you are, you can move forward, or you can go backwards. So for those listening, you always have three choices when you're at a crossroads, when you're facing a major decision. You can stay where you are, you can go forward, or you can go backwards, right? But in the end, he said, your destiny is always in front of you. Your destiny is always in front of you. And with that, I made the decision to walk away from my full-time job in April of 2008. So for the last, 12 years, I've been a full-time entrepreneur. So I'm very proud of that, because that was one of the first times that I really, really laid it all on the line. And I said, if I'm going to go for it, it's going to be this moment that I'm going to do it. In this moment, I got to lay it all on the line. And that's what I did, making that decision. So, and I haven't looked back. Like you said, I've been floating from that point to this. God has taken care of me. I've continued to grow in business. I've continued to evolve. And it's all because I made that decision back in 2008. So for me, that was a big accomplishment because I never knew that I could be like a full-time business owner of thousands of people for 12 years.
So let me ask you this. What personal struggles did you deal with that? What roadblocks? Because, you know, when some people think of roadblocks, they think, oh, just my family or, you know, or something else. But what personal, what mind roadblocks may have played a role at that time to even get you to 12 years down the road? Because, you know, your mind is where the battle is, right? And it's an everyday thing. We have to renew our mind. So what type of roadblocks did you experience?
Yep. So one of the biggest roadblocks that I experienced was just belief that I could do it. You know, it's one thing to see other successful people, to hear the stories, and to celebrate others. But then at the end of the day, you really wonder if you can do it yourself.
Right.
So in the beginning of my business, I spent a lot of time really comparing myself to other people. I had no confidence in myself. I had no confidence in my own voice. I would try to emulate other speakers that I'd seen who were successful. And I was like, okay, that's what success looks like. So I'm going to talk like that. And then it would be an epic fail. Or I would see someone tell jokes and get a huge response from the audience. And I was like, okay, that's how I got to move the audience. I got to tell jokes like that. That's how I get, you know, get ahead. That's how I get success. And so the more I tried to emulate someone else, the more inauthentic I was in front of the room, I could never experience joy. I could never experience lasting success. So it took me years.
Okay.
It took me years to figure out who I was, to build up my own confidence in my abilities to be successful in my own skin. It took me years to discover my own authentic voice. So I tell people, listen, I'm not a fast learner, but I'm a thorough learner. When I get it, I got it. But it took me years. And I think a lot of people, they want success overnight and they don't understand that, you know, part of your journey may be, you know, you just, you know, going through the valley for years trying to figure it out, you know, having to overcome obstacle over obstacle, setback along the journey. And it's all part of the journey because I believe that it's all designed to teach you something. So like I said, it took me years to figure out who I was, to build my confidence, to share my own authentic story. There were things that I had gone through. I didn't think was important. I didn't think was valid. And so I was afraid to tell my story. I didn't think anybody cared. Anybody wanted to hear. I didn't think it had any value to people I was, you know, called to speak to. So I had to go through personal development. I had to go through spiritual development. I had to go through a lot to get to where I am right now. So people see the results, you know, an author, you know, someone that's coached and trained thousands of people and spoke in front of large crowds. They see the end result, but they don't see, you know, and understand or take time to understand what it took to get here. And you know, like you said, the battle really starts in your mind. So I've read a lot, went to a lot of classes, connected with many coaches so that I could, you know, get to the point where I could create sustained, lasting success for myself.
Yeah, that's good because a lot of people don't think that their stories are important enough. They don't think that people want to hear it because they don't think that they're important enough. Right. And sometimes it's by default, right? Depending on how you were raised or how the people around you cherished you or just even your story or who you are. And some people don't understand that your journey is your journey and it's important and it can help other people and that you don't get there overnight. Right. You know, you don't just wake up one morning and go,
I have arrived.
Right. Here I am, right? That's not what happens.
Right.
So thank you for sharing that, because it just does not happen that way. So when was that moment that you figured out, this is me, this is what I'm doing, this is me, this is Chereace, and I am enough, and I'm just going to go out here and I'm just going to kill it? When was that moment? Oh, you froze. Chereace, are you there? Chereace, are you there? Chereace? Listen, everybody, this is what happens when you are doing amazing things in COVID world, okay? Stuff pauses, stuff happens. So we are back up and running, and I'm so grateful for that. So like I was saying, when was the moment that you realized that I am enough, Chereace is that chick that's gonna come in here and tell you what I need to tell you, and that's it, and then I'm gonna leave and I don't know, just drop the mic. What was that moment?
You know what, I will have to say the moment was when I walked into my boss's office and I said, I'm officially resigning from my good government job. Listen, I will never forget that moment, because first of all, there were people that were saying, Chereace, there's no reason, there's no way that you will walk away from a good GS-14 $120,000+ job a year. Like there's no way that you would do it. So I had many naysayers, or haters as we call them. People just didn't believe. And then my boss, of course, my office, they didn't believe that I would ever do it, because who does that, right? Who walks away from a good old government job? And so when I walked into his office, first of all, as I contemplated prior to getting that word from God that, I could walk away from my full-time job because my destiny was in front of me, I was so nervous about having that conversation. But once I got that word from the Lord, girl, I walked in there. I was the one man. I was like, listen, I'm giving you my 2-week notice. And I will never forget what he said. He was like, first of all, he was shocked. Looked at me as if I was crazy and said, are you rich? Like, what are you doing? And I said, no, I'm not right now, but I am on my way. And that, I'll never forget that moment. I'll never forget the feeling I had, the level of confidence that I had in my ability to tackle any difficult task, right? I'll never forget the confidence that I had in whose I was and this journey that I was getting ready to embark upon. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew who held my future. It gave me all the confidence that I needed. So with that, seriously, it was just uphill from there. That was really a defining moment for me. And that was when I realized, you know what, Cherise, you can do anything. You can do anything you put your mind to.
You know what? When God gives you a word, there's like a holy boldness.
There you go.
You're like, I don't know, but he told me. So, so I think that it's important that we remember that if the word came from the Lord, as good as it is, you might as well just go ahead and throw your hands up and say, okay, I don't know how.
Right.
I don't know what any of this looks like, but I do know who said it. And because I know who said it, I know what the end is going to be, because it's a finished work.
That's right. That settles it. Period.
Right.
Look, period. Is that what they say now? Period.
Right. Right. That's exactly. It's hard though. It can get hard depending on what it is, because you wait and you wait and you wait and you wait and you wait, and depending on how long it is, you can get weak in your in your faith, but it's important to go back to that word. What did God say?
That's right.
Right? Like, what did he say about it?
That's
and
right.
and that's your fuel, right? That could be your fuel through it. So what does your ex-boss say now? Does he ask you for business advice? I'm just
look, we didn't there's so much space in between us. Like, I don't even remember, like, my life today is barely recognizable. Seriously. Like, the boss, the coworkers, that's like so far behind me. I don't even remember his name. Hello.
Well,
I had no time for that. What was his name again?
Right.
Yeah. And you know what? And that's important to really highlight, right? Because sometimes what we can do as we're moving forward, we can be holding on to the past. Right? We can continue to look back, right? Continue to want to hold on to some old relationships, some old habits, some old people, and sometimes we just got to cut it off. We got to cut out people from our lives. We got to cut off, habits, behaviors, activities. Like, there's some things that God calls us to cut off. It is a remnant of our former self, our former life. And, we take the lessons from those experiences, but we throw the bones away, and we got to continue to move forward. And I think we do ourselves a disservice when we try to hold on to that was, right? Just leave it in the past where it belongs.
Finding the courage first to do that.
Yeah.
You got to find the courage to do it. And I think in finding the courage, you find yourself, and realizing that you cannot do it by yourself. It was never meant for you to do it by yourself. God always wanted us to do it with, alongside him, ahead of us, of course, and then us following. But finding that courage in order to do it. And my hopes is that people start to do that. And this is the time right now, in this space of isolation, in this space of being by ourselves in our homes, where everything is closed, where, everything was closed. A lot of places, everything is still closed to me. Let's just be clear. I'm still closed.
Good for you. But your neighbors and so forth in Georgia, what they doing?
I don't know.
I don't know, right? Because as for me and my house, we here right now.
We're right here. But I hope that people are taking advantage of the opportunity to discover themselves.
Yeah.
Because knowing who you are is like an amazing thing. And not even just knowing who you are, but asking God to show you through his eyes. God, allow me to see me through your eyes. Do you know the beauty in that? Yeah. Like, you'll start walking different.
Hey.
You'll start like
showing up different. Like what?
Right. You'll start showing up different, but that's good. Let me ask you this. What would you say was the hardest crowd you've ever had to face? Like, the hardest crowd ever had to face?
Look, I don't even think it's a was. Like, to be honest, it still is. Whenever I am presenting in front of my peers,
okay.
That for me, that's a challenge. But you know what? I appreciate the challenge. I embrace the challenge because, I think that we make the mistake when we try to run from difficult things and run from hard things. And so, we're always going to be faced with challenges. And so for me, the crowd, the difficult crowds are people who are, they know me the best. These are people that may, be in the same industry as me. They already know what I'm saying. So I can't tell no lies. I can't get it wrong. Right. When you're speaking to a bunch of strangers, right, they don't even know what you're talking about. So you can mess up and get back on track.
Right.
But you speak in front of your peers, it's like, oh my God, like, what if I say the wrong thing? I think I know everything. I practiced, but, and so I can remember like the first time I was asked to speak on a national stage in front or at my company's convention. And it was my very first time. And those were my peers, right? Even though I had reached a level of success that many of them had not, they were still, you know, my peers and colleagues, right? We were still on this journey together. And when I tell you, it took me weeks, maybe even months to prepare myself mentally, to make sure I was prepared to execute the content. I had worked myself up so much. Like that entire weekend, I was not myself. And so I'm sharing this for people because you think that when you see us on stage and we're flawless, like it takes a lot to get to that point. Like you were sharing in the beginning, it took a lot for you to get to that event, right? So there's a lot that goes into being flawless or coming across flawless, right? But it's embracing, you know, what it is that you need to do, not feeling bad, not condemning yourself because of the process that you have to go through. And so I just go through the process. I went through the process, and it took me weeks. It took me months, but I did it. And I think that every time we push past our comfort zone, every time we push past what we think is difficult, we build a little bit more confidence in our abilities to tackle those big tasks. And listen, if we're, you know, I believe that we all have a story to tell. I think we're all called to impact someone. And so if we're going to impact the people that we're called to serve, we're going to have to rise. We're going to have to step up, move outside of our comfort zone, get past our own selves, and tackle the hard. And it's going to be hard. But you said something earlier that I think is so important, is that you're not on this journey by yourself.
Right.
This platform that you're putting on, bringing successful people in their own rights to have these conversations, to share insights as to what it takes to be great, what it takes to, you know, have the impact that you want to have, is so necessary. So you have to connect with people like yourself. You got to participate in these conversations. Success leaves clues. So when you hear someone sharing and they say, this is what I did, this is what I'm reading, this is what I'm listening to, you got to do it too. Like nobody gets away, nobody gets out of it, you know, without doing the work.
Right.
You have to do the work. And so this platform that you have is allowing people to tap into people that has done the work, is still doing the work, and can give you some insights as to what it takes for you to reach that level of greatness that you desire.
Yeah, and being at a level of openness and transparency is important as well. There's nothing wrong with saying that you're afraid. You know, there's nothing wrong with because everybody is. When I speak places, I do the same. Let me tell you, my close friends or family, they know. I always pick up the phone and go, oh my God, I'm nervous. My godmother, she says, okay, we're doing it again.
Right.
You know, like, because she knows the motion, and I'm always, okay, so this is what this is what I have to do. This is what this is where I'm going. This is the event I'm going to. I'm getting on a flight. I'm going here. I'm nervous. But then when you get there, and then as soon as for me, I don't know if the same thing for you, but as soon as I open my mouth, a piece. Like, I'm nervous the whole time. I'm sitting there and I'm, you know, whatever, and you smiling at the people, you're shaking hands, and as soon as you step up and you open up your mouth, then that's when it goes.
Well, it goes back to what you said earlier, right? It's taking that first step.
Yeah.
And so you'll never know. Like, fear will continue to take over if you don't, you know, push past your fears, if you don't do it afraid, right? And so it's okay to have those breakdowns. It's okay to have, you know, the rituals that you go through before you speak. It's okay to be nervous. The thing is, you got to get up there and do it. Like, don't let it control you. You control it. You control the people. You control the nerves. You push past it because it's not about you. It's not about you. It's about the impact. And that's what I've told myself. I have it written in my office. Like when I'm speaking, make it more about my impact and my message than about me. And I think a lot of times people are stopped in their tracks and they get consumed with fear because they're making it all about themselves. And it's not about you.
Right.
Really not about what you're wearing. So it's not about what you look like. It's about the words that you speak.
Right.
And it's about you reaching the people that you're speaking to. Right. So as long as you keep that attitude that it's not about me. And that's one of the biggest things I will tell you, LA. That was one of the biggest things that really pushed me beyond myself. Right. Realize that, Cherise, this ain't even about you. So when you make it about you, that's when you are consumed with fear. When you make it about you, that's when you don't know what you're going to say, how you're going to say it, because it's all about you. And that's not what it's all about. Your focus is off. That's what I have to tell myself, Cherise. Your focus is off.
Yeah.
And that's what I will offer to people.
That's important. That's important. That's a good piece of advice, that when you are doing something, you have to remember that there is a bigger picture.
Yep.
And it's not about you. You're just the vehicle that's being used at this moment.
Right.
So, and a lot of the times, it's a humbling experience when you realize that you're being used for such a great thing. And when you realize that you're being used, then you pull it back and you're not going, I did this.
Right.
My answer to everyone when they ask me about anything that I do, it's a God door. Like, oh, it's a God door. Well, how'd you do this? I prayed and God did it. Like, I really, and I'm not even being funny. There is no way in the world that I could do this by myself.
Right.
There's no way in the world that even 4 years ago, I would see myself where I am right now. Because 4 years ago, I saw myself not doing it at all anymore, period. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
4 years ago, I was standing in the hotel room, pep talking myself for 45 minutes just to step outside of the door. Like, in the mirror, well, you don't want to do this. No, I don't want to do this. Crying, having to redo my eye makeup, whatever, because I was so afraid. So there's no way I could have done it by myself. And when we give the glory and the honor to who it is due to, and we really know that our dependence is truly on God and God alone, then it takes the pressure off of us. Yeah. You do not make things happen. God makes things happen. You take the pressure off of you to make it happen.
Yeah.
Like, how you gonna do that? Well, I don't know. I'm gonna pray and I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna wait for the instructions, and then I'll be obedient enough to follow. But it's never you. When people get into it, well, I did this. Like, I don't understand why people say they're self-made millionaires.
Right. You can't do anything by yourself. I mean, truth be told, if you're going to reach the highest levels of success, you cannot do it by yourself. Hello.
Right. There's no self-made anything, but a lot of people,
Yeah.
don't understand that either. Would you say you're walking in your purpose?
I believe so because it feels good. It feels authentic. It's not hard to do. And I make impact. Right. And so when I think about, walking in your purpose, right, I believe that, that's a big question, right? Because the people always have the question, like, what's my purpose? What am I here to do? Am I walking in my purpose? And I think, for many people, if not everyone, your purpose is already inside of you. It's about just discovering it. And my pastor always taught was, your purpose is that thing that is giving you either a burning desire for change or something that just, like, irritate is a strong word, but something that really bothers you, like something that just brings you, like, as a burden for you. That's the word. That's the burden.
Okay. Yeah.
So for me, I just had a passion and a burden. I had a passion to help women to see beyond the limits of their circumstances, right? That's the first thing. And then I had a burden when I saw women have all of these talents and gifts and great ideas, but be so burdened with fear that they stay stuck in their situations. They couldn't see a way out, right? They didn't know what the first thing was they needed to do. And so that was a burden for me to help women to bring out those beautiful, wonderful gifts that God has given to you, because we need them. Like,
Yeah.
I'll tell people, like, if you're holding on because of fear, you're holding out because of fear, and you can't move, you're paralyzed with fear, then there's going to be somebody who does not get what you need, because you're called to somebody. You're
Yeah.
called to impact some group. And so if you're sitting there paralyzed with fear, then somebody is not going to get what they need to have. And so
Yeah.
for me, it was all about helping women to figure out, what do I need to do first? We don't need to know the whole alphabet. We don't need to go from A to Z in the first session, the first day. Because there's a famous quote that says the journey to 1,000 miles begins with a single step. So
Yeah.
what's the first thing that you need to do? Like Martin Luther King Jr. said, faith is taking that first step when you can't even see the entire staircase.
Yes.
So what do you need to do first? And I think a lot of people get paralyzed with fear because they're trying to see the entire staircase. They're trying to figure it out from A to Z, and that may not be possible. Just take the first step. And I guarantee you, just like you saw, right? Go back to what you said in the beginning, right? You take that first step, and then God will begin to reveal what you need to do next.
Yeah. I always give the example. I spoke at an event here in Atlanta, and I told the audience, imagine on the outside of your door, there are thousands of people waiting for you to just open the door, and they won't and cannot move without you opening the door. That's how important your purpose is. That's how important what God put in you is to other people. Somebody's life depends on your movement, your word. And there, unfortunately, are so many people that don't think they're important. They don't think they're that important. But you would not be here on the earth if you did not have any type of importance. There is something on the inside of you. There are billions of people in the world. Billions of people in the world. So if you open up the door, there could be thousands of people waiting on you.
Yes.
To move. That's how important it is to do it afraid. That's how important it is. That's why it's so important for you to pray and say, God, what is it that you have for me to do, and help me just take that first step, just the first one. And then we can go again. I tell people, take it second by second, minute by minute, then hour by hour, then day by day. And then if it becomes too much, start over.
And that's okay to start over. It's okay. Ladies, gentlemen, people listening, it's okay if you have to reset.
Right.
And I believe that where we're at right now, we're resetting. This is a reset for a lot of people. And so if God calls you to reset, to stop and to start over, that's okay. Because trust me, what's for you is for you.
Right.
As long as you're on the path that God has you on, then you're not missing out on anything. I promise you.
Right. Right.
You're not missing out on anything. I promise you. You good.
Right. 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 Which actually segues us into the next question about what's going on right now with COVID-19 and this global pandemic, and the reset. How are you personally coping with the circumstances that surround this global pandemic that is, that's happening right now, that none of us in a million years would have even imagined to happen, because it has shifted our lives in such a way that none of us expected? How are you coping?
Yeah. So for me, and this is how I approach everything. Everything in life comes down to first accepting reality. Like this is the reality that I'm living in right now. Can't resist it, can't change it. Even if I wanted to, would love to, but I can't. So let me just accept where I'm at. And so, after accepting, it's like, okay, God, what do I need to do? What shifts do I need to take personally? What shifts do I need to take professionally? What shifts would I need to make, maybe need to make mentally and emotionally, so that I don't just fall apart? And so part of that, number one is just, again, accepting the reality. Number two, making the online shifts that I needed to make in my business. I think this is a great time for all of us to be creative, to think outside the box, right? Because for me, in the work that I did, there was a very specific way in which, I had to be in front of people. I had to, see and physically be in front of people. And now with the global pandemic, it's causing us all, the industry, to show us that we don't even need to do that. Like there's other ways that we can get to the end result than what we even thought or imagined, right? So making those accommodations, making those shifts. And then from a spiritual standpoint, which ties into my mental and emotional well-being, is making sure I'm taking even more time, quiet time, to spend with God, so that I'm not driving myself crazy, right? So I can really hear, okay, God, what do you want me to know? What do you want me to see? What do you want me to experience in this season? So making sure I'm very intentional about the time that I'm spending with God. And the last thing is to make sure I'm physically active. Like getting out of the house for me is so important. All of April, the weather was decent enough when it wasn't raining. The temperatures were at a level where I could bundle up, put a jacket on, put a couple layers on, and go outside for a walk, go outside for a jog. And I cannot tell you how refreshing that is to get some vitamin D, right? To get some fresh air. And so I didn't think that I did as much as I did in terms of my physical activity, but I was on a group chat earlier today. We were, talking about a challenge for this upcoming month in terms of the number of miles we wanted to run and walk. I said, let me go back and look at what I did this previous month. And I had ran and walked a total of 64 miles.
Wow.
I was like, what? You did all of that? I was like, beast. Pat yourself on the back. You did 64 miles. You go, girl. But the point is, this is what we got to do, guys. We got to move our bodies. We got to make sure we're spending time with God so we can get clear. Our mental well-being can stay, stable. Find those things that you love to do, even in the home.
Right.
Room. And make the shifts necessary in your business. Make the shifts necessary in your business. And if it's time for you to start a business, make those shifts necessary to start your business. But whatever it is you're called to do, this is the time to figure it out and then do it.
Right. So I'm going to go here because you're Miss Financial Strategist. So
let's go there. Let's talk about the money.
Yeah. Let's talk about the decisions that people need to be making right now concerning their finances, because it can be really easy to make the wrong decisions at this particular time due to fear or lack of knowledge.
Yes.
Due to fear and lack of knowledge. So what advice would you give the listeners about what they should do as far as financially during this particular time? What are just a couple of practical steps that, whether or not you have $50 in your bank account or $100,000 in your bank account, what's a couple of practical steps that they should be taking now during this particular crisis?
Yeah, one of the biggest things you talked about was the importance of education. It's something I am a proponent on, is just educating people on how money works. I think that when you're educated, you're exposed to new ways of doing things. And it's an opportunity for you to reconsider some of the ways that you may be spending your own money. I firmly believe that whether you have $50 or you have, $50,000, you can begin a journey, start on a path to financial freedom. I think the biggest mistake that people make is that they don't know or they don't believe that they have enough to get started. And it's not necessarily about the quantity, because we can get there, right? But it's about the quality of decisions that you make right now. I believe that many people are spending money unknowingly. People are spending money unnecessarily. And so while we have this reset, while we're in this pandemic, we can't really spend a lot of money. At least we shouldn't. I know people still shopping online.
Listen, let me tell you something. It got me at the beginning. I was like,
I know.
I need a support group.
Right. No, I'm with you. I had to pause myself. I think a lot of people feel that way. Trust me, people are still spending money. But again, I think it comes down to education and awareness, because I firmly believe that people are spending money unknowingly and unnecessarily. And when you can begin to fill up those gaps, plug in those holes, then you can begin to make sound financial decisions that helps you reach your goals. I think that, everybody can start where they are, reducing their debt and building wealth so that they can retire tax-free. That comes down to a level of education and awareness. And for me, I am a strong proponent on helping people to understand, how money works, because we don't know. People are working very, very hard for their money. But what we need to be doing, especially as a community, is finding strategies and ways to get our money to begin working
for us.
And we can do it. Everybody listening to this conversation can do it right now. It's about having a conversation about where you are, where you want to be. See, a lot of people don't get to where they want to be because they don't know. They don't know.
Right.
Well, a lot of people get to age 65 and they're unable to retire because they haven't sat down long enough and sat down with someone else to really come up with a plan, a strategy. So we start where you are, we look at where you want to go, and then we create a plan that allows you to get there, a solid financial strategy for you to reach your goals, whether it is paying off debt, whether it is, getting to building generational wealth for your family, because I think a lot of people in our communities talk about this thing called generational wealth, but are you really doing the right things, putting the right vehicles in place to create generational wealth for your families? And there's a way to do that right now, where you are. And so for me, it's about education and awareness.
Okay, well then that's a beautiful segue to let everybody know what's next for Chereace Richards. How can they contact you as far as this financial education is concerned, because people do need it. And I think that if they don't know where to go, they just don't go anywhere. So tell them where to go, how to get it. Are there any websites they can tap into? There's a lot of education out there that people just don't know about. So they don't look it up or read or anything like that because they don't know where to start. So tell me what's next for Chereace Richards, and tell them where they can get in contact with you for this particular education.
Yes, they can start with me. There's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of experts. There's a lot of different opinions out there. And so what I would advise people to do is just sit down with someone that can give you an overview about how money works, that can educate you financially. I can do that. And then, begin to think about for yourself, what are your goals? What are your financial goals? And then, let's come up with a plan to reach those financial goals, but then figuring out, okay, which strategy works best for me, right? And so that's the danger of listening to everyone, is that, then you get confused with the overwhelm in information. So I advise people to start with me. We can go through some basic information about how money works. You can go to my website, ChereaceRichards.com. There's an opportunity on the website to schedule some time with me to sit down. There's a couple videos on the website as well to get an idea of the type of programs that I offer. But I encourage everyone to schedule the time to sit down and let's talk about, where you are and where you want to go and see if we can come up with a plan that works for you.
Well, that sounds absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
I want to thank you so much for taking out the time to talk to me tonight and share all of those great nuggets of wisdom that you have released to everyone in the audience. And just thank you so much for being a guest on Conversations with Greatness.
Well, thank you, LA. Let me just close by saying thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for creating a space. Thank you for you having the courage to put on an event like this to bring experts to the virtual world in a time that I believe that people needed the most. And so I'm so excited for what you're doing. I'm excited for where you're going. And I will just continue to cheer for you from the sidelines. But thank you so much for bringing this conversation to the platform because I think it's absolutely needed.
Thank you again. Have an amazing night, and I'm sure we'll talk soon.
Yes. Record.